Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. Hope you are all well and safe. As you all know, I recently purchased Rebelle 3, probably the best watercolour app on the market. So why would I want to paint a watercolour in Artrage? Let's watch the video and find out. So I'm in Artrage. This is the canvas size I'm using, 3150 pixels by 4350, so it's a reasonable size. These are my canvas settings. I'm not going to go over all of those. I'll just show you so you can see what I've got it set up to. And why am I painting a watercolour in Artrage when I've got Rebelle to paint watercolours in, which is the ultimate for painting watercolours? Well, not everybody has got watercolours. Not everybody has got Rebelle. So I thought, you can still do a good watercolour in Artrage and different apps. So I want to sort of show you that so you don't forget. I'm going to start off with a paintbrush, and I'm going to use this round and smooth. I use this smooth brush. Oh, that's a bit small. I used this smooth brush recently, and I liked it because it sort of gave you this nice, neat look to your paintings. I don't like what I'm doing here though. That's talking, you see. I can't concentrate when I'm talking. Let's start it again. The photo, by the way, is outside my studio. I'm starting to get trees in and shrubs and plants to sort of make it blend in with the garden a little bit more. That's more like it. I want to get. You're probably wondering, why is he painting the tree first? This is a watercolour. Well, this is like the masking fluid layer, and I'm going to use stencils. I did a video on stencils a while back in Artrage, so you want to check that out because it does go into it in quite a bit of detail. But what I want to do here, I've learned since I made that video, I've learned one or two more sort of shortcuts and quick tricks. So I'm just going to paint everything of this tree in one colour. A few sort of leaves on here. I've made quite a few stencils now. You'll see in a minute or two when I open up the stencils folder. I've been experimenting, and I was toying with the idea of making them available for download. I wouldn't charge because they're a bit sort of, I don't know, a bit unique, and there's not a lot of use you could get from. That's making sort of squares, isn't it? So I would just make them as a freebie, I think. Right, I'm going to do the, I don't want a round and smooth one. Let's try this billboard one. Yeah, that's it. Because this is a cherry tree, so I want to put some sort of round cherries dotted on it. This is going to be a bit not your conventional watercolour. I think it will look like I've used a stencil perhaps, but I'm not bothered. I just wanted to try this out, and I just wanted to remind everybody that you don't need to go and buy Rebelle, because I've been making quite a few videos on Rebelle in watercolour, and I didn't want people to think that I'm not going to show you watercolours in other apps, because I think other apps do a very good job of let's go back to that round and smooth again. A very good job. It's gone a bit thin. Of watercolors, and they shouldn't be forgotten. Now, I don't know if I'm right doing this as a stencil, but I'm going to anyway. I'm just going to do a little bit like that, and this frame here, I think I'll put that in as well. Okay. So this is all, you know, in effect using masking fluid, but I'm using stencils. Sometimes this smoothing does work if you've got a bit of a dodgy shaky hand, I have to say. There we go. And hopefully I'm going to turn this into, you know, a proper watercolor looking painting with all these nice shadows in. So that's my stencil. How do I make that in a stencil? Because last time I went through quite a long way about it, where I sort of chose file, saved it, then imported it. But all you've actually got to do is right click on the layer and go new stencil from layer contents. Boom, you've got your layer. Now I want to paint the background, so obviously this stencil is blocking the background. If I right click or click with my my pen button, the bottom one, I can hide the stencil, sorry, invert the stencil. There we go. And I want to create a new layer, and this layer, this bottom layer, I can hide that because, you know, I don't want that anymore. And I can start painting, and this stencil is going to block everything out. So go to my watercolor brushes, and I think I'm just going to stick with default brushes. I know I've made some of my own, but I'm not going to use them because I want to show everybody that you don't need to go out and buy extra things for Artrage. You can do a reasonable watercolor without. I'm hoping. So let's try this low blending brush. I think that might give us a nice effect. And I'm looking at this sort of fence, not fence, this is the side of my studio. Let's get a pretty big brush and see what we get. So that's a bit brown. And I can mix these colours with this brush. I like that. That's cool. A bit lighter. A bit warmer. Sort of mixing it up a little bit. Lighter still. Just round to the edge there like that. We've got a little bit of green coming off down here. Go with this sort of limey green. Maybe let's just try that, see what that looks like. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. And the nice thing about this, you've got 100% control over it. Let's go for some blues. You know, I can go away and have a cup of tea and come back to this, and it's going to pick up perfectly well. And I want this sort of diffused look. There we are. Look how the colours sort of blend together. That's really nice. I like that. Bit of green. We'll go for sort of a blue-green. It will give us that sort of distant look as opposed to this bright green, because you don't want your painting to look flat. And then I'm just going to go with some, I know we've got really nice bright blue sky, but I'm just going to go with a sort of diffused look there. So I've got my tree in, got that nice water in. Let's get some grass in here, like that. Let's go with sort of an in-betweeny colour. Like that. There. So, I suppose I ought to put a little bit of brown in, the full brown there. Like that. But I've got these sort of rough edges things going off. So what I like to do now, I go to my palette knife, and I want hard out. Do I want hard out smudge? No, I don't. I want harsh chaos, and let's make it a bit bigger. And that you can just sort of blend away those edges. Look, you can leave a few dry bits. I can blend colour here if I want. And that gives it that sort of added watercolour look. There we go. So I've got the background done. So that's a fairly decent chunk of the painting already finished. I'm really pleased with that. So, on what it looks like without hiding the stencil, I've set up a keyboard shortcut. So if I press Control H, hang on, what's happening here? It should hide the layer. Did I not hide? Oh, there we go. Let's just switch that. So there you can see that's now sort of showing you the mask. Well, I've got the bottom layer showing then, so I've just did that. And if I press Control S, it brings the stencil back. And Control H again, so hide and show. You can do that by right clicking with your mouse button, but I find that quite cumbersome. I don't like doing that. So if you want to sort of set up your shortcut keys, if you've never done that before, go to Edit, Set Keyboard Shortcuts, and from there you can scroll down and look for stencil commands. And there you can see, if I'd clicked on idle stencils, it says press a new shortcut to do that. Well, I've already done it, so I'm just going to click cancel. And you can choose any combination you want and then OK when you're done. So that way I can sort of show and hide that stencil really easy. So I can work with it on and off. So it'll come more into usefulness when I'm painting the tree and I want to keep sort of having a look at where we're going. So I'm going to show my stencil again, because if I don't show it, it will work as though it's not there and you'll just start painting over it. Because I want to create a new layer and start putting some of these shadows in. And I'm still not going to do the tree yet. So let's have a look. What I quite like that. Quite like this low blending thing. I'm going to go just put an indication of that, the panels in that panels in the studio, and then choose my palette knife again, just to sort of soften off the edges in places, especially there at the bottom. So that's given me the sort of little bit of side of the cabin. I'm not going to do it all, that's not what it's all about. I think we need some of these shadows that are below or on the lawn, sort of round here. Go back to the brush. I just took the loading down a bit, that's a bit severe, isn't it? I just undo that a bit, that's too much. Too much, man. A bit more thinners, less paint. Maybe a little bit lighter, perhaps. That's better. That gives you that sort of watercolour look, doesn't it? Maybe a little bit more purple. And I'm not going to put the tree in the plant pot. I'm going to have that sort of firmly embedded in the ground, like that. Yeah. Just mix these colours up a bit. Some green in there. Can you see how it's coming? And then we've got this sort of dark shadow behind. Probably want to let's put a bit more paint in and less water. Let's try the wet on wet brush. Perhaps might be a little bit too, again, a bit too thick. There we go. Back to my palette knife, just to, you know, add a little bit of bleed, I suppose. I could do some shadows under here as well, couldn't I? There we go. A little bit of shadow there. Get some green in. Oh, don't know what I did there. Let's just undo that. Let's put some shadows on the cabin. try the heavy bleed brush. Get the loading down a bit. And try that again. Something wasn't. Was it? I think my brush is way too small. I think that. Oh yeah. That's it. Just gonna undo that. I think it's a little bit heavy. Maybe it wants to be a bit bluer as well, to be honest. Right, let's try again. I don't know if I've got the right brush there. Let's see what else we've got. What's this? Oh, I'm on the heavy bleed. Harsh lines. I don't want harsh lines. Let's try the low blending again. That's better because it actually pulls through that paint. That's more like what I'm trying to get. Put those shadows on there like that. Well, I've made a mistake there. It shouldn't come to that point. That's not cool. Can I rub that out? Yeah, that's cool. That's better. And then maybe one sort of like that. And like that. Yeah, there we are. That's better. Right, I think I'm ready now to invert the mask. Well, let's first of all look at it without the mask. Okay, cool. I like it. I want to create a new layer, show the mask, and then right click on it. A bit tricky that. And invert the stencil. I call it mask, it's a stencil. Invert that stencil. So now I've got my new layer and I can start putting colour on that. So let's go back to this low blending brush. That's cool. Make it a little bit bigger. And if I was to just colour that in, I might as well have just painted it on a different layer over it. So I'm going to sort of mix up colours and things and leave little gaps, sort of like that. Dark colour on the edge of the leaves or branches, I should say. There we go. Change up the colour a bit. Let's put some warm colour in there, like that. Let's pick a green, lime green, I guess. Nice bright leaves. Let them bleed into the bushes a bit. The twigs, branches. There we go. I love the way the colours sort of blend together. There. We need a little bit of purple, I think. Yeah. Or pink. Just for the lavender tips there. This frame, we can make that sort of a grey colour. That's a bit darker into it as well. Plant pot, I'm going to make that a green. Oh. Now this is where it comes into its own, because the toggling of the stencil, because I can sort of have a quick look at that and think, yeah, I can see where I'm going, but I need darker colours in here, and lighter colours there perhaps might work quite nice. So I show the stencil again, and then I can erase this a little bit. Oh dear me, just erase that a little bit there. But show that again now. Hide it again, sorry. Can you see how it sort of brought that tree out? And that's the beauty of using the stencils. Still got a lot of work to go. I'm liking this bit. Let's get some cherries in. So let's show the stencil again. Get some reds. Start painting these cherries in. That was a leaf really, but never mind. There we go. I'll pick up a bit more green. This time I'm going to go a little bit darker. Just add a bit of variety. Some sort of wispy strokes. Let's have another quick look by hiding the. That's all. Now we're getting there. Now we're getting there. I think I should save it at this point. So looking at this now, I've realised I need to just sort of soften off the edges of these shadows a little bit. So I'm going to choose my palette knife and just go in there. Soften that a bit. They were all a little bit harsh. That's better. There we go. And the same here. Probably make the brush a bit smaller. If you hold shift and the square bracket, you can size your brush up really quick. Otherwise, if you just hold the square bracket, it takes ages. And same on here as well. It just needs a bit of softening. In fact, I'm going to show the stencil, invert it a second, then I can sort of soften around there, and it isn't going to paint over my little frame. Let's soften off some of these as well. Just gives it that more watercolor look. There you go. And hide the stencil. Yeah, now I need to create a new layer now. Let's change the blend mode to this layer for a bit of fun. Artrage is unique and it's actually got a blend mode called watercolor. So I'm going to select that and hopefully we're going to get a nice translucent look. So choose the brushes again. I'm liking this low blending, or do I want heavy bleed? Low blending, I think, is the brush I want. I'll make it a tiny bit bigger. Let's get some of these shadows, trying to get some form into this area. I'm liking the tree, but I want something more going off here. So, shall we go with some greens to start with? Bit too much, just sort of take the loading down a little bit. Should I show of the stencil? Yeah, I'm going to show the stencil so I can sort of preserve those highlights. There we go. There you go. The purple, pinky purple. It's good. Some stronger shadows. Yeah. Oops, move my stencil. Don't panic if that happens. Yeah, like that. Toggling between painting and the palette knife to get some nice shadows on that. There we go. Just making this bit up, really. Some sort of shadow work there. Like that. inside the stencil. You know what? If I show the stencil again, go back on, I think this is the layer that I painted the stencil work on. I want to invert the stencil and just see if I can get rid of some of that. Some of that colour, just to bring back a little bit of highlights just there. Yeah, that's better. Like that. Show it again. I'm going to zoom in on this bit. Oh, if you don't have your cursor over the stencil when you're trying to zoom in and things, it can give you problems. And I just want to put a little bit of a shadow smaller. Choose blue. So there's a little bit of colour on there. I'm leaving some white. That'll probably do. Yeah. Now I'm going to choose the wet on wet because it's quite strong, and just maybe let's just create a new layer. I don't know. Oh, that's telling me it's a watercolor layer, isn't it? Is it? What's that all about? Yeah. Sort of freehanding this in. I know I could go back to the stencil, but I don't want to really. I want to just freehand it now. Puts that frame in there, nice. What we're looking like. Let's zoom out again. We go, put a little bit under there, and then use my palette knife just to soften that off a little bit. There we go. Put a little bit of a frame on top of that. And I think I'm nearly there, you know. I think that's pretty much it. Let's get it signed. I just want to do a little bit more work to define some of the shapes. So I've flattened all my layers into one layer so I can sort of get some new highlights in, and then I'm going to create a new layer, and then I'm going to sort of paint along. I've got the which brush have I got? The wet on wet brush selected. I just want to sort of define the edge of that plant pot. I felt it was a little bit lost, and then just put a few grasses in here. like that. There we go. Take the Harsh Chaos blender, soften the bottom of that a bit. I just think that adds a little bit to it. And I'm going to, because I've now got everything on one layer, I can choose an eraser. I think that's this one. I want a fairly, let's choose the hard edge one. And I just want to sort of lift out a few. These, like this, because I want to put some pink in here, and I just felt that I can't paint it over. I've got to have a nice clean colour, so I can go to the pink, pop that in, maybe with the low blending brush perhaps. That wet on what's a bit harsh. And a bit of blue as well. Hopefully that will give it that look I'm after. Yeah, that's better. I'm just wondering if I should just sort of flick in a few more branches or pull a few out. Let's go on this new layer. Oh! No, I think that might spoil it. That could well spoil it. I could take the blender and just sort of soften off the edges slightly of the tree so it looks less as though it's been done with a stencil. Give it a more painterly look. There we are. It's nice that I've blended merged everything into one layer, because I can sort of just soften complete areas. That's it. That'll do. That is it finished. Right. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, first of all, thanks for staying with me right to the end. It's quite a long one. Hopefully you've realised now, if you haven't bought Rebelle, you don't need to, because you can still do watercolours in other apps, and I just happen to have chosen Artrage for this one, but there's loads you could use. Procreate, Art Studio Pro, Tchaikovsky Sketches, Paper by 53, although it's not called Paper by 53 anymore, I forget what it's called, but there's just loads of apps you can use. Critter, obviously, and any app. Well, not any app, because some of them don't quite cut the mustard, but definitely Artrage. I'm waffling. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, a big thumbs up, as always, is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I've got loads of videos like this, and I would love to be sharing them with you. Don't forget, everybody, keep painting, keep safe, and stay sane. Hopefully, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.